Hey YouTube family, Mike Jones here. Welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things investing and personal finance with the genuine hope that we are able to inspire at least one individual to go ahead and start their financial freedom journey today. With that said, today we're going to be doing something totally different from anything we've ever done on this channel. And today we're going to go ahead and be doing a little bit of a story time feature. I'm going to talk about how I went from being in debt and being extremely broke to almost $50,000 in investments in 2 years. And we'll get right into that right after this. Hey YouTube family, welcome back to my channel. So today we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it. Now the reason I'm doing this video is because I want to really inspire those who are just getting started with their journey to not get discouraged. For instance, you may be in a lot of student debt, you may be a current student, you may have given up on school and now you're working a job that you don't like. You may have graduated from school and be working a job you don't like. Any of these things, you fall under the category of someone that kind of aligns with some things that I've been through in my own life. And so I'm gonna go ahead and give you a little insight on how I went from being broke, having no money to my name, getting paid on Friday, and by Wednesday having $20 in my pocket, to where I am today. And we're gonna go ahead and get into that right now. But before we get started, I do want to go ahead and say thank you so much for watching this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you wouldn't mind commenting down below what exactly about this video you like, which part was your favorite, and also, if you never want to miss out on anything that I post on my channel, make sure you go ahead and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it. So, where to start? The story actually goes back about 4 years. So 4 years ago, I was 22 years old. I had no money to my name. I was working 2 jobs and I just, my life wasn't going the way that I had thought it would go. And so I actually decided to make the move to go ahead and move to Virginia from California and, start over, see what I could make out of myself. And at the time, I was living with some family members and that quickly didn't work out. And so I was on my own. At 22 years old, I was on my own. I was trying to figure out what exactly I was gonna do. I had nowhere to go and I had to figure it out. I had 2 options. I could, come back to California and still try to figure it out on my own, or I could, go ahead and figure it out in Virginia, where I already was, where I packed up all my stuff and already was, and I'd already been there about 2 to 3 months. And so I decided to go ahead and stick it out in Virginia. When I went to Virginia, just a little insight, before I went to Virginia, I was working all types of odd jobs. I would say that I was a jack of all trades. I mean, I had worked a job at Wendy's, I had worked as a CNA, I had worked for FedEx Ground as a package handler. I had done pretty much anything you can think of, and but I had never considered, becoming a server. For some reason, I had this fallacy, this common misconception that servers can't make good money because I don't know. I don't know what it was. I just felt like they rely on tips, and so they can't make good money. Now, there are a lot of servers who don't make good money, but that doesn't mean that you can't make good money as a server. And I quickly found this out while being in Virginia. Now, I've always been an intelligent kid, not to toot my own horn, but I knew immediately moving to Virginia that the pay wage was not something I was willing to settle for. At the time, the pay wage was $7.25 an hour, and I just didn't want to settle for $5 an hour after taxes were taken out. So I gave this, serving stuff a chance, and it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. And I would say that moving to Virginia was one of the best decisions I ever made, because it allowed me to, grow in my personal development exponentially. And so, without getting off course, the first job that I had in Virginia was at a little Thai restaurant, little hole in the wall. Very, very cool people, down to earth. The chef was the dad, and his son was the general manager. It was really homey and awesome, and they treated me with a lot of respect. But there was one problem. There was a girl there that he left in charge. The general manager left in charge while he went on a trip, and during the time he was gone, she got into it with me, and I got fired as soon as he got back. And he was almost in tears letting me go, because we had bonded so much, and he knew I was a good employee. But me and the person he had left in charge just didn't get along. I felt like she had it out for me, but neither here nor there. I went ahead and left that job, and the next day I started applying for more jobs. And to be honest, a job at the movie theaters, a job at Kroger is what they have there, or Sam's Club, sounded really good at the time, just because I didn't have a job. But I stuck to my guns, I stuck to my instincts, and I went ahead and decided to keep on applying for restaurant jobs, because I really wanted to learn how to be a server. And I was actually just on the cusp of becoming a server at that other job. I had one more day of training left, and then I would have been serving there. But anyways, I actually ended up getting a job at the restaurant that was right in front of the Tita Thai place, because the Tita Thai place was in this big complex. There's a movie theater on the left side. Tita Thai was on the right side, and then right in front of Tita Thai was, I believe, a DoubleTree hotel, and right in front of the DoubleTree hotel was my next restaurant, which was like an American bistro. And so there I actually had an interview with the assistant general manager, and he liked me, but he only wanted to make me a busser. And honestly, I couldn't have said anything. I was out of a job. I needed a job, and if I needed to start at busing, that's what I was gonna do. But he said, you know what, let me go ahead and have you interview with the general manager, because we do a two-step process here. And so I interviewed with the general manager, told him my story, told him where I was at, and just was completely transparent with him. And because he liked my personality and he believed I could do the job, he gave me a chance to start off as a server. So in my whole restaurant experience, I've never started off as a busser. I never started off as a host. I've done those jobs within the realms of being a server, but I never specifically was in those jobs. So that was a blessing in itself, because it meant more pay and it meant an opportunity to make more tips. And at that American bistro that I worked at, I mainly got lunch shifts, but I was just happy to have a job, happy to make a little cash on the side. And, at first, my money management skills were still absolutely terrible. I didn't have much to spend money on, but I've always, ever since I've had a job, I've spent my money on, things that don't matter, like food, going out to the movies, dates, unfortunately. And so I just never managed my money, and I never had money to my name. And so I actually ended up, while I was working the job at the American Bistro, I ended up going ahead and applying for other jobs, because I felt like I had finally gotten a gist of just exactly what it meant to be a server. And I've always been a huge people person, so I went ahead and applied, and there was this new restaurant opening up, and I went ahead and applied to that. And if you know anything about opening a restaurant, they say that they only take the top 10%, but it almost feels like they hire everybody, because there's always like 100 plus people getting hired when a new restaurant opens. And so I went ahead and got that job as well. And I also interviewed in 3 different spots there. I interviewed with the kitchen manager, I interviewed with the service manager, and I interviewed with the bar and general manager. And all 4 of them liked me. You know, it's just, I basically hit it out of the park. I Aaron judged it. But I ended up just going ahead and sticking with the service manager, and she immediately made me a server. She didn't start me off as a host or a busser. She immediately made me a server just off of my personality. And you know, it was funny because a month in, I became her best server, or at least in the top 2 or 3. And you know, one time we were taking a break because we worked double shifts, and she told me, like, you know, to be honest, I really didn't think you could do the job, but you know, you've proven to be one of my best servers. And so if you're thinking about getting into the service industry, I know it's a little shaky right now with everything that's going on, but if you're thinking about getting into the service industry, if you can just be personal with your tables and, you know, be a people person, anticipate what they'll need and treat them as if they were your family members, you can do exceptionally well as a server, bartender, anything. And I think that could apply to other jobs as well. But moving on, I still was at a point where I wasn't doing well, and I wasn't managing my money. But something sudden happened, and I had to move out of my family's house, and I was completely on my own with nowhere to go. And so I was completely transparent with my coworkers, and I told them, like, look, I have literally nowhere to go. I am trying to make it on my own. So any way you could help me, that would be awesome. And my coworkers, shout out to them, shout out to those VA people. You know who you are. They literally looked around as a group and said, we're gonna help Mike Jones. Every single night, somebody's gonna go ahead and allow Mike Jones to sleep on their couch. And they allowed me to do that. They allowed me to do that for 3 months until I had enough money to go ahead and get my own place. And I was able to go ahead and get my own place, and I am eternally grateful to those people. But through this process, there is a bright side to all of this. Through this process, I was able to learn money management skills. By the time I got to my own place, I had about $4,000 or $5,000 in my pocket, because at the time I didn't have a bank. And obviously I don't do that anymore, but I had $5,000 in my pocket. I was ready to go ahead and start learning about this management stuff. And so how did I learn about managing money? Honestly, I looked up stuff on Google and YouTube. Google, YouTube, and Pinterest were my education. I have gotten a doctorate in finance from these things. I'm not saying that, I know everything about finances, but I feel like I've learned so much in this 3-year period from these experiences. And so I started budgeting. I started seeing how much money I could save. I started making sure that, I paid my rent ahead of time if I could. I paid for my food, electricity, all that stuff. And it was a really awesome experience. Now, the only thing that I did, I would say inefficiently, there was 2 things. That first 6 months of being on my own, I was making so much money as a server, anywhere from $200 to $250 a night, because I was working literally all day. $200 to $250 a night. If I was working just a night shift, I'd make, about $200. If I was working all day, I'd make about $300. but you know, 200, 250 to a night average. I was making so much money that I would go to the bars with my friends, and I'm just gonna keep it real. I would go to the bars with my friends after work, after a long day, and you know, eat and buy somebody some drinks, and you know, I was sharing the wealth. But I stopped doing that around after 6 months of doing that. I stopped doing that. Something that was really instrumental to helping me out as far as tracking my money and making sure that I always had money, because a common thing with servers is that, or bartenders, is like, oh my gosh, I don't have any money. Like, we're always out of money because we get that money every night, and it's that instant gratification. We don't have to wait for those paychecks. And just a little insight, in Virginia, you get paid $2.13 an hour, so you really only rely on tips. Luckily, the people that I encountered, they all tipped me pretty well. I only had a couple stiffs in my whole, you know, restaurant industry career, and so I'm really grateful for that. God was definitely looking down on me in that aspect, but it's really sad because that's, you know, one of 40 states that do that. Only 10 states in the whole country allow you to get a paycheck on top of tips. So Californians, we're super fortunate to be in the situation that we are, even if we don't make as much tips. Now, so one of the apps that was super instrumental to helping me go ahead and make sure that I wasn't running out of money is this app called Tipsy, Tipsee. I'll try to go ahead and put a link down below so that if you are in the restaurant industry, you can go ahead and download that. They have a free version and a pro version. Honestly, you don't need the pro version unless you have you are getting a second job, or you have a second job, or you have multiple jobs. Then it can go ahead and calculate just how much you've made after tip out, if you have to pay tip out. But for me, it was just easier to go ahead and use the free version. With the free version, after I would work one shift at a job and I would go to another shift at a job, I would just add the money on and average that out to get my average per hour and see how much I was making. Now, I would average anywhere from, you know, 24 to the highest was like $45 an hour per shift. And so that was really awesome. And I know God was really blessing me and really growing me during that time, really looking out for me. But that first way was the way I was being really inefficient with money, was, you know, spending like $60, $70 a night right after making that $250. So that wasn't good stewardship. But moving forward, I didn't do that anymore. But I also had another way that I didn't spend money in a smart way, and that was through using Uber. At the time, I did not have a driver's license. At the time, I had never had a driver's license, and I wasn't gonna learn how to drive in Virginia. I usually just walked anywhere I needed to go, and at times when it was too much to walk, or I didn't feel like walking 7, 8 miles, 10 miles, or I couldn't get a ride from a friend, I would just take Uber. And I actually calculated just how much I spent on Uber per year, and it was something like $4,000 to $5,000 per year that I was in Virginia, and I was in Virginia for 2 years. So I spent about $10,000 on Uber to get around, and so that was wasteful. But besides that, I managed my money extremely well. I saved around 60 to 70% of the money that I made during the time that I was there. And so when I eventually came back to California, I had like $12,000 to $14,000 that I came back with, and I had never ever saved money before. I'm trying to explain this to you, like I'm trying to emphasize, anybody who knows me knows I never saved money before. And so this was huge for me. This put me on top. And you know, I had never been in a situation that if something happened, I would be able to pay for it. I would usually have to ask somebody to go ahead and pay for it, and I'd pay them back, or I just barely had enough to go ahead and pay for that expense. But moving forward, once I saw that I had this separation and I had this relief, I never looked back. And it's funny because I didn't start looking at Dave Ramsey videos and learning how he did his things until after I was already out of debt. And so when I got back to California, there was a couple things that I needed to do. To show my maturity, I went ahead and paid my parents the back rent that I owed them when I had left. And I also went ahead and, per my mom's suggestion, I went ahead and erased all my student debt. Now, fortunately for me, my student debt was only about $8,000 with the interest that I had gained on it. And so I went ahead and paid that off. Now, maybe I should make a video about how to maneuver student debt and how to make sure that it's not affecting your credit and all that kind of stuff. So if that's something that you'd be interested, make sure you go ahead and comment down below. And if I get enough comments, I'll go ahead and make a video about that. But so I went ahead and managed my money and got out of debt. And so after paying my mom and paying off my student debt in 2 payments, I was down to like $4,000. And that was still enough for a solid emergency fund. So what did I do from that point? Well, from that point on, and I actually in Virginia, I did a little bit of research in investing and stuff like that, but I didn't get started. So my next mission was to find 2 more jobs here in California while going to school full-time to go ahead and participate in. And so I got 2 server jobs, and I was going to school full-time, and I was paying for my schooling originally because I wasn't qualified for the financial aid. I didn't get qualified until I was 24. And so I paid like a year's worth of school when I came back to California. And then the next year I was able to get financial aid, and they helped in a major way to help me get the 2 degrees that I just graduated with in May. So shout out to financial aid on that part. But in the meanwhile, I was still stacking up money, and I just kept on stacking up money. It was ridiculous how much money I was stacking up between the 2 jobs. I didn't take that first leap into going ahead and investing until last year. Now, you might say, dude, you've only been doing this since last year and you have almost $50,000 invested? Yes, and that's because I am insane about my investing. I am a super aggressive investor. But before we get to that, I think there's something that we need to shout out, and that is my decision. As soon as I got back to California, I made a decision to go ahead and start tithing. And for those who don't know what tithing is something that a lot of Christians do, especially if you're a devout Christian. We believe that God has given us everything and blessed us with everything, so we go out of our way to thank God for that. And His minimum for the thanks that He deserves is the first 10% of all the money that you receive. And so I made a pledge to go ahead and every time I got money to give God 10%, whether that was through gifts, whether that was on my tax return, whether that was on tips, whether that was through my check. And actually the first year I didn't pay out of my check because I was paying so much money out of my tips, and I felt that the tax return 10% tithe that I would give off of that definitely made up for the money that I didn't give, the minimal money that I didn't give from the paychecks that I was getting. And so I just thought it equaled out. But since this last year, at the start of 2020, I made an even more aggressive pledge to go ahead and tithe 12% and 12% on everything. So 12% on my paychecks, if I have tips, on my tips, my tax return, if I get stimulus check money, any money that I get, I give God 12%. And that's just my way of thanking Him for all the blessings that He has given me, not just financially, but with my health, with my family being healthy, and everything going well for them. Just thanking God. So I just wanted to go ahead and shout out that part or that aspect of my financial piece. And so, as I said before, in a year span, I've been able to put almost $50,000 into investments, and my mind is blown that I was able to do this. So how did I start? I first started, playing around with acorns and stash when I first got back to California. And I don't count that as true investing, at least not for me, because I was only putting in the money that that was coming off the debit card that I was using, or I would use their found money. In Acorns, they have this thing called found money, and it's different companies, and you can get a reward for using that company's found money button and all that kind of stuff. And so I would do that. Sorry about that, my battery died. But as I was saying, there was found money, and basically you could use a company like 1-800-Flowers, and if you press the button on the inside the Acorns app, and it would take you to the website 1-800-Flowers, and then you could go ahead and do what you're gonna already do, but get like a $10 reward for spending $50 on 1-800-Flowers. And so I used that app, and it was fulfilling, but you couldn't really use the money for anything. So I ended up going ahead and ending both the stash and the Acorns account, because it wasn't what I thought investing should be. I thought it was just like, a way to kind of dabble in it, and I wasn't looking to dabble into investing. I wanted to get started. I felt behind, and I still, even to this day, I feel behind in investing. There's some good YouTube friends that I would consider friends that I've made by doing YouTube. And one of these guys, shout out to him, he's 22 years old. He's got over $200,000 in his portfolio. And so shout out to him, because I'm not there, but one of these days I will be there. And so moving on, the next part of my investing finance journey was that I went ahead and completely changed my mindset on money. And so how did I do this? Well, even to this day, I always put myself in a deficit. And what I mean by that is usually I do this month by month, but before January of 2020, I went ahead and paid for all my expenses, my car, my cell phone, my rent, all that kind of stuff before the year even started. And I'm super proud that I did that, even, with everything that's happened, not knowing that I wasn't gonna have a job, I wasn't be having flowing money coming in from a job with everything that's happened this year. So I'm really proud of myself for that. But I always put myself in a deficit, and so even if I've made $3,000 like this month, I would look at all the expenses that I have and discount that from the $3,000 I've made, and then I would take the rest of the money and save it. But before I would do any of that, I would go ahead and take 12% out of that $3,000 and give that to my church, or give that to my church, and then I might even give a little more money to a charity or something. And so that's exactly how I go about my finances. Most of my money is saved or invested, and the rest of my money is in a savings just for an emergency fund, and then everything else is for expenses and tithe and everything like that. And so one of these days I'll go through and I'll give you tips on just exactly all the things that I do to stay ahead and what apps I use and all that kind of stuff. But this is just, one of those stories where I thought it would be a way to inspire like-minded individuals who think they're in a rut right now or are in a rut. So moving on, the next move that I made is that I went ahead and opened up an IRA in 2 different accounts, and I opened up my 401k at my job. And like I said before in a previous video, I had no idea that we were allowed to have a 401k or even get 401k matching at my job. And so being oblivious to this fact really hurt when I found out, but I'm so glad that I went ahead and started to be a part of it. And I started off little with like 25% of my check going to it, and then by the end of my time there I had the max, which was like 60% of my check going to it. But it was really 100% of my check going to the 401k. It just was that the other 40% was for taxes. And so that was really awesome. And that account's through Fidelity, and I've showed you that before. And then I opened up, I've talked about this in a previous video, but I opened up my Wealthfront account, which was a Roth IRA, and I opened up Vanguard Roth IRA. And Wealthfront, if people don't know still, it's a robo-advising app where you don't pay a financial advisor, you pay a robo-advisor to go ahead and allocate what exactly they think you should have in your portfolio and how aggressive you should be based off the way that you answer the application questions. And so I did that for about, I don't remember, like 3 to 6 months, and then I decided that I probably could do a better job managing my money manually, and so I went ahead and switched over to M1 Finance. Now there was no fees for this, but the process took about 35 days to actually transfer all my money to M1 Finance. So that really sucked because I lost 35 days in the market, but totally worth it in the long run. What's 35 days in 40 years? So I'm totally happy with that decision, and I still have the Vanguard account, and I split these 2 accounts equally. So $3,000 into my M1 Finance, $3,000 into my Roth IRA, and I have yet to go ahead and start paying myself in my Roth IRAs. So I'm gonna start doing that over the last couple of months of this year, and hopefully by my birthday I will have capped out again the $6,000 limit, because in April, whenever the April deadline is for taxes, which I think is April 15th, is the same day that you cannot contribute to IRAs. Just a little pro tip. And so the last thing that I did, which has been the most amazing part of my whole investing journey, because it was completely unexpected as far as like the progress that I've already had in the last 7 months and everything, was opening up my Webull and my Robinhood account, which I regularly talk about on Fridays after the market closes. So make sure to tune in for that. But let me just take a second to say, if you love this video or you like this video, make sure you're smashing that like button and hitting that subscribe button, commenting down below what exactly you can relate to and can't relate to. And yeah, so the reason this was completely unexpected is because I opened both of these accounts on the exact same day that I opened my Roth IRA for my Vanguard and for my M1 Finance. I opened all 4 accounts on the same day of last year, and I think it was like August 15th of 2019. And to see the growth of everything that's gone on is absolutely phenomenal. It's crazy. I researched all of this stuff for about 2.5 years before getting started, and to see it coming to fruition for myself has been absolutely phenomenal. My biggest mistake was not getting started when I started researching it 2.5 years ago. But in the time that I've had both of these brokerage accounts, I have gained over $7,000 in these accounts. I was up to $8,500 before we had a miniature correction about a month and a half ago. But I'm so happy with $7,000. I could have never fathomed that I would be able to grow my account that much in that little time. So I've made about, $1,000 per month inside of a pandemic and, an economic crisis. And so I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed, and I'm thankful that I was able to listen to my instincts and that God put me in a position even this late into investing to go ahead and get started and still see some growth. Because as great as it is for me to sit on here and talk about investing and everything, it doesn't really hit you until you see the growth for yourself. And so if you haven't done that, I definitely have links down below that can help you with that. I have links for my for a Webull referral. I have links for a Robinhood referral, in1 Finance. I have credit cards down there. I have useful links for equipment if you want to go ahead and get started with your own YouTube channel. I have a useful book down there. So definitely look down in the description where I have all of this stuff. And I hope that this story felt like it came from a genuine place, and it doesn't sound like I'm bragging or anything, because I'm truly bringing this to you, and I'm being completely transparent so that hopefully we'll be able to inspire a person to go ahead and get started. If you are that person, please go ahead and comment down below so that I know that I'm making some kind of impact. My deceased father used to say, you cannot make an impact without a collision. And without me going through all the things that I've been through in my life, I don't think I could have made the impact that I'm trying to make now. And so I am very proud to stand by that original quote by my dad. And with that said, I do want to say I am not a financial advisor. I make these videos for educational and entertainment purposes, and hopefully they are inspirational to you. Any information in these videos, you should go ahead and do your own research and consult with a financial professional to make sure that this is the right choice for you. With that said, it is always an absolute pleasure to bring this content to you. Like I said, if you would go ahead and smash that like button, comment down below what was your favorite part of this video. Hit that notification bell if you want to be a part of the movement. Subscribe so we can keep this channel growing. And if you wouldn't mind sharing this with somebody you think that this would help in some way, that would be awesome as well. With that said, thank you so much for listening to this video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you and God bless.